Welcome, my friends. It's a very special occasion and honorable occasion. I wish to welcome you all to meet. This is a relative of my mother. This is Mr. Arun Gandhi. He's well known for being Mahatma Gandhi's grandson. But I don't want to focus too much on that. Your whole life yourself has been so filled with lessons, learnings, contribution to humanity in your own right. So namaste and thank you for being here today, Mama. Really appreciate it.
Namaste. Thank you.
So if you would be kind enough just to share, you come from a very powerful, notable legacy. If you would like to share, please, this Gandhian philosophy, which I have also been deeply immersed in and focused in and touched with, is people have questioned, is it relevant today? This day of hustle and bustle and material gain and these ancient philosophies which Mahatma Gandhi brought, ahimsa and such. I'd love to ask you, what's your view of that today? Is it still relevant? And should we embrace it or find something new?
I think it will always be relevant because it's a philosophy that is based in love, respect, understanding, compassion, all the positive attributes that exist in all of us. And what it does is it tries to, because of our materialistic lifestyle, we have suppressed all these good attributes and we allow the negative attributes to dominate us. And that's why we have violence and exploitation and all of these evils that go on in the world. So what he says is we have to regenerate and bring the goodness in us to the fore and allow that to dominate our thinking and our attitudes. So I think any philosophy that is based in these positive attitudes will never die.
Absolutely. Thank you. Today is also a monumental occasion of Mother's Day in the world. And, when I was speaking with my mom today, she might be on in the chat box. She was so happy that we were going to connect. My mother has been such a very powerful servant leader of our community. She's been leading seniors organizations now for 25 years plus with my father, organizing and such. And what is the role today that you feel of mothers and women in today's society?
I think women have a very important role to play. They've always had this, but the men have always dominated over them and kept them suppressed. But I think it's time now that the women come out of their shells and take control. And I'm glad in many places women have risen to high places and are doing wonderful work. New Zealand comes to mind immediately. She's been there and she's doing a much better work than any of the so-called professional politicians among the men. So I think, we need and women have this innate tendency for compassion and love, and that's what we need in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. More now than ever. I'm curious, Mama, what's your take on this? We're in this whole COVID situation around the world. What's your take on where we are at now as a society? And more importantly, as the relaxation starts to happen, the doors start to open, what is next for us? How shall we move forward in the world? What is the most wisest thing we can do as society?
Well, we do need to move forward. We can't remain static in any place there, but we need to determine what course we are going to take. And I think COVID has given us the opportunity to stop and think and think of where we are, what we are, where we are planning to go, and what we need to do, and then come to the right path and do the right thing there. COVID has brought almost the whole world to a standstill for more than a month. Nobody has been able to achieve that uh, as much as COVID has done. And I think we need to take that time to do some introspection and think about our destiny. We have been very selfish, self-centered, thinking only about ourselves, and the result is that we think that because we have the power and the money and so on, that we'll find a vaccine and we'll destroy this threat and just go on with our life. That has been our tendency in everything, even in physical attacks from other countries or wars. Destroy the enemy and just go on living as we do. At some stage, we've got to stop and think that you just can't keep destroying things and go on. We've got to learn a lesson from these things and change course. I mean, this whole concept about good people and bad people, and that we can eliminate all the bad people and we'll live with good people, it's all wrong, because there is good and bad in each one of us, and it depends on the circumstances that we face that brings out the goodness in us or brings out the bad in us. So we can't eliminate all of humanity. And I think the worst thing that and this COVID has given us the opportunity to look at this also, is that over the years, because of our lifestyle and our selfishness, we have created poverty in the world.
Yes.
And half the world now lives in abject poverty and half the world lives in affluence. And this is wrong. And this, we cannot survive in peace and harmony if half of the world is suffering. So it's our responsibility to ensure that everybody in the world gets a decent living standard and not be selfish and just keep everything for ourselves.
This is way beyond any left wing, right wing politics. This is really, I feel, the core of human condition.
It is. There's no left wing or right wing in this. Gandhi's philosophy was about being compassionate, and compassion is not something right wing or left wing. It's for everybody.
If we look at our world circumstance right now, multinational corporations seem to be pulling many strings. People, the one percenters, tend to be, if you will, influencing everything from politics to life to food to water, everything. If we go back to India during England's occupation, Gandhi started the Satyagraha movement.
Mm.
And, you know, even though we were not armed, we didn't have guns, and we didn't have the military might of the British, it was through a long-term process, but concerted long-term process where not just one man, well, not one great man like Gandhi, but he was able to inspire and awaken some deep resolve amongst the whole population to be more compassionate, not to see others as enemies, to embrace them, to ask politely with love, to go back into your own world. Let us take care of our own selves. Would you be kind enough to share more about what Satyagraha is and how that's even more, I feel personally, a very powerful intention, a very powerful way of life to take on now, to be able to move the forces that are perhaps not for the greater good into some other new way of being.
Yeah, I think what his philosophy reflects is that um, we can't destroy hate with hate. We only multiply it. So if we want to get rid of hate, we have to use a different tactic, and only love can destroy hate. So using that, uh, you know, um, that theory, he realized that when we fight a war, if somebody attacks us violently and we fight back violently, we are only increasing the violence in the world. And we don't want to increase the violence, we want to decrease the violence. And the only way we can decrease the violence is by using a different method of resolving this. Because again, I go back again and again to this materialistic lifestyle. We have chosen the path of punishment. Like we have our entire criminal system, for instance, is based on punishing. If somebody does something wrong, we just catch them, we punish them, put them in jail, and lock them up, and we think we have done the right thing. But we never stop to think about, why did that person do that bad thing? What motivated that person to do it? What were the circumstances? We never address those circumstances. We just punish the person and be done with it. And that mindset, evolves into all of our different actions. And that's why we think that we can build a strong army, have all the weapons of mass destruction, and anybody who comes messing around with us, we just destroy them, and we'll be happy. We will end up destroying the whole world. We are not going to be able to survive without that. Our survival, we forget that the security and stability of any nation, however powerful it may be, depends on the security and stability of the whole world. If the world goes down the drain, we are going down the drain with them. So we have to be conscious of this, and we have to live in a way that we can bring about harmony in the world and not make each other fight. They fight today because of different ideologies, but mostly because they don't have the means to live a decent life.
So it's like these symptoms of poverty, these symptoms of people becoming angry, lashing out, the symptoms of crime and such. What I'm getting from what you're saying, these are symptoms, and the real
Mm-hmm.
cure is the root of being, is
Yeah.
addressing the root of oneness, compassion, love, inclusion, having our world family be experienced and seen and embraced as a
Mm.
world family. This is a very wonderful part of our Indian culture, of Gujarati culture, our family. As you know, our mother's side is very embracive, very loving. Anyone who comes by the house is brought in as a guest. The doors are always open, the food is always flowing, the embrace is always there. And
Mm.
so, you know, my family has taught me so much about not the words of inclusion, not the ideas or the philosophies, but through the demonstration of bringing food together and sitting around dealing with the stuff of life in a very simple human, not in a highly intellectual way, but in a very family oriented way.
Yeah, we have a tremendous heritage, and instead of building on that heritage, we sometimes end up exploiting that heritage. And And I think what we need to remember is we need to go beyond just opening our doors and allowing people to come in and have a meal and go away. We have to go beyond that and see why is there so much pain and agony in society. Why are there so many people living in poverty and destitution? And what can we do to help them? You know, when we go out to help people, the help should be of such a nature that it rebuilds the self-confidence and self-respect of the individual rather than oppress them. You know, I have a problem with these religious institutions that feed the poor people. You know, we'll go on feeding them. They become dependent on that meal, and they look forward to that all the time. That you're going to provide us the meal. One day you can't do it, they'll be all lost and say, "What happened? We are hungry," and you know, then they rebel. That makes them dependent on charity. We don't want people to depend on charity. We want people to raise themselves up and be respectful citizens. And that can only be done when we our help enables them to find their own strengths and their own thing. And so it has to be very constructive. You know, Gandhi talked about two things in his philosophy of nonviolence, and one was trusteeship and the other was constructive action. Now, trusteeship, people don't really understand it. It's a very simple theory. He said that all of us who are successful in life, we have a talent that we may have be acquired through our education or inherited a talent or whatever it is, but we have a talent that we exploit for our own goods. So we think that we own that talent and we are, you know, legitimate in using that talent for ourselves. He said that we don't own the talent, we are trustees of the talent. And as trustees of the talent, we should be able to use the talent for other people as much as we do for ourselves. That means giving to other people, but giving constructively, not oppressively, like we give charity and make the people dependent on charity forever. What we need to do is to lift them up, give them the means to realize their strengths and realize their self-respect and self-confidence so that they can stand on their own feet and do things for themselves. So whatever we plan, it has to be constructive. It has to be designed in a way that will enable those people to stand on their own feet.
Beautiful. So that was trusteeship. So taking the opportunity to recognize that the gifts I have cultivated, the gifts I've been given, the capacities I have, whatever they are, they're not just for my own self. They're for the greater
Right,
whole. And they're to be
right.
dispensed and to be in support of the greater whole.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love the way that you shared that. You know, I'm reminded of stories of Gandhiji going from village to village. Many
Mm,
people in the West think that he was giving lectures on how to oust the British, but from what I hear, and please share with me about this, from what I hear, much of it was about lifting the villages up, having them becoming self-determined,
right.
self-resourceful, self-reliant, teaching them how to grow food, how to have better sanitary conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
please
it was
share that.
more educative than political thing. He went out, and not only did he go out and visit villages, but he sent out young people to go into the villages and stay there and and work among them and, address all the problems that exist in the village there. And so there are many programs even today. A lot of people, a lot of young people today who have not met or seen Gandhi in life, but they've been inspired by his philosophy, and they do wonderful things. So I've been taking a group every year on a Gandhi legacy tour from the United States, mostly students and professors, because they wanted to know what can one person do, how can one person make a difference in lives of people. And so I identified several programs in India, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra. And we go to all these programs and we see how one person has transformed the lives of millions of people.
Wow.
And, one program that I always have been very inspired by and been very uh, deeply involved with is the program of Rajendra Singh in Rajasthan. Rajendra Singh was a doctor. He was working for the Rajasthan state government. This was about 30 years ago. And after 4 years of working for the state government, he got tired of the bureaucracy and he decided to go out on his own. So he went to a village in Rajasthan and built a little house, and he put out his shingles and he's offered medical help to the village people. One day, an old man from the village came to him and he said, "We don't need your medicine, we don't need your education. What we need is water." He says, "Look around you, there's no water. This area is becoming a desert and people are suffering." So he said, "Well, I'm a doctor." He says, "What can I do? I don't know how to get water for you." So the old man said, "Come with me, I'll show you." And he took him around on a tour there. And that part of Rajasthan is very mountainous region. And he showed him that the little rain that comes every year just flows down the mountain and disappears. Within a day, it's dry again because there's nothing to hold the water in place. So the old man said, what we need is inexpensive small dams at various levels to catch the water and not let it flow away. So this doctor told him, "You know so much about it, why don't you do it yourself?" So he said, "Well, I've been telling the village people for a long time, but they think I'm an old crank and they don't listen to me. And so nobody does anything. But if you tell them, they will listen to you." And then this old man died after a few days, and Rajendra Singh felt obliged to do something in his memory. So he went and learned a little bit about rainwater harvesting and came back, and he started on his own land. He started building these little dams, a series of dams. And very soon the rain came and the waters were there and held there. And so he had, a regular supply of water, and that water seeped down and the groundwater levels started coming up. And the village people saw this and they started saying, "Oh, we want to do this too." So he started a revolution.
Yes.
He got all these village people to do the same thing, building these dams. And in 30 years, he has transformed nearly 2,000 square kilometers of land in that area from desert into a verdant field.
Wow.
And not only trees and bushes and all that are growing, but he's created lakes in various places. And those lakes have revived the wildlife. Wildlife that have started coming, the birds have started coming, and flowers blooming. And the village people who were getting just one crop a day, one crop a year, are now getting 4 and 5 crops a year. So their affluence has increased. And this whole transformation took place from one person, getting involved in building this trust. So these are the kind of constructive programs that grandfather wanted people to carry out, so that those who have the knowledge can share it with those who are living in poverty and destitution and change their lives and make it worthwhile for them.
That is a very powerful share and story. It lets me know that we can, each individual has an inherent power of goodness that is far more powerful than any darkness and any ignorance or any greed or any shallower emotions.
Oh, yeah, it is. And, unfortunately, what happens with us is because of the type of education we get, they harp on knowing the results before the action is taken. I mean, we want to plan everything in such a way that we know what the result is going to be. And the result is not always in our hands. Action is in our hands. We have to act. Results will come depending on the action. And that is what hinders us very often. We look at the poverty situation and we say, well, half the country is living in poverty. We can't do anything about it. So forget it, just go on living our own lives. But one person can go out and change 1,000,000 people or even 500,000 people. And, it makes a difference. So if
Absolutely.
all of us do it, we can all transform this world.
This brings me to this share. So, my friends who are listening here, some of us are in a sense of we feel there is some contribution that we can make. We feel the swelling in our heart that we are part of some greater resolution and greater hope. But not knowing where, what to do, what is mine to do. Can you please give us some insight on how someone can find what is theirs to do and how they can contribute rather than stay in some form of defeated state or one day it might happen or waiting for a hope? I truly believe we don't have time to really wait right now. This is a very
Yeah,
powerful.
we don't have, time is running out very quickly, but we can all do things. We have to realize that not all of us have that capacity or um, the means to go and become an activist like Rajendra Singh was able to do. But we do have the capacity to see programs like Rajendra Singh's programs or so many hundreds of programs all over the world that are achieving good results. And we can support them through our funds and through being, a support group for them. Because if you see, all of these programs are languishing for support of money. They don't have any money. If they had the money, they would expand their programs very much. And it's sad that all these good programs don't have money, and where money goes into programs that are not meaningful at all. We'll rather give $1,000 to feed some hungry people for a day, but we won't give $1,000 to a program like this where something constructive is being done. So we have to, take stock of our own lives, look at our own capacities and our own power, and then decide accordingly.
Is it worth it to be able to aim to try to convince or influence our world leaders, our political leaders, our economic leaders, CEOs and such? Many people feel that they have deaf ears, all mired in their own personal motives, cross motives behind. Is it worth going to them with some form of collective appeal, or is that just a waste of energy?
I think it's a waste of energy because they are the product of an exploiting society, and they know it's all about power. They want to get into power. They'll do anything to get into power there. So, to change their things, their habits, it cannot come from top down. It has to come from bottom up. We have to change ourselves. That's why grandfather said we must be the change we wish to see in the world. If we don't change our attitudes and change society, the politicians are not going to change. They ultimately come from society, so they just reflect the weaknesses of society.
So it all boils down to, once again, our trusteeship, what our individual capacities are and making best use of them, but in a
Right.
concerted, direct way. Now, you also shared about constructive action. Can you share more about that, please?
Well, like I just gave you the example of Rajendra Singh, that was constructive action, where
Yes.
he did something that not only changed the lives of the people, but it gave them the possibility of progressing through education and other means. So that is constructive. And there are several programs like that all over the world that are doing good constructive work. And constructive work basically is any kind of work that empowers the oppressed to stand on their own feet and be counted, instead of handing out, like the famous Chinese saying, you teach a man, you give a man a fish and he'll eat one meal, but if you teach him how to fish, he'll eat forever. So basically, that's what this constructive work is.
Very good. The other thing that Gandhiji was very, deeply sharing about was our lust for desires, our lust for material things, our lust um, that gets wrapped up in competition. Who has what, how much, who, comparison of my belongings, my material gain versus others. And I've seen that as a constant, never ending battle that happens in the mind that drives and fuels this continuous drawing out of the earth for us to have more and more. How can we get to the happiness? Can you share more about the happiness and the fulfillment that comes? What is the other way to achieve true happiness and fulfillment rather than consistent in endless consumerism?
Well, the consumerism has never brought happiness to anybody. We can have millions of dollars and we can have all the luxuries in the world, but ultimately we are empty inside. It doesn't bring us happiness. I haven't seen one millionaire who can sit back and say, I'm happy and enjoying life. They're always unhappy people. And happiness can come only by serving the poor, by serving the oppressed people and giving of yourself.
I agree. It's the only form of fulfillment that's everlasting, that goes
Yeah.
deeper than us. Love that's given magnifies. Things that we aim to get diminishes.
Mm.
What do you feel, Mamaji? What do you feel are right now, if we could say, what are the top three or top issues that we as a collective society must address to move ourselves collectively out of chaos and out of self-destruction into a more harmonious world? If you were to boil it down to three or five, what would you say that we need to come around the most strongly with?
I would think the most important is to get rid of this materialistic mindset, which has seeped so deeply into us that even now measurement of success is all material. How much money does a person make? What kind of car does he drive? What kind of a house does he live in? That, that is the measure of success. What good that person does, it's not a measure of success at all. And so we need to change that mindset. And the second thing I think we need to change is our education system. Our education system is based on manufacturing, I say manufacturing workers for industry.
Hmm.
We need technologists, we need medicine people in medical field, and so we just keep producing these people and putting them out into the marketplace and go out and make money there. Education is not just about giving a person a career, it's about building a person's character. And that building the character of a person has no room in today's education system.
Well, you've just nailed it right on the head, you know. You know, in the warrior principles, in the warrior sage principles, philosophies, character is the paramount cultivation.
Mm.
And you know, integrity, truthfulness, loving oneself, loving one's family, being a servant to society, developing one's character is the essence. And what are ways that we can start to cultivate now? So even though society's gone off, we here, the ones who are listening here in this group of mine, we're very impassioned about making a difference. We're very impassioned about strengthening ourselves for the greater whole. Where do we and how do we start building our character to face being a true trustee for the planet?
Become the change you wish to see. Start by doing introspection where you're going wrong, what are things that you need to address and look at and transform, and then change yourself accordingly and become more of a giving person than a taking person.
It really boils down to such simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's the hardest part. Our minds are constantly looking for externalized solutions.
Yeah, we want, we want solutions from outside, and we want complex solutions. Actually, life is very simple, and they're very simple problems. There are very simple solutions, and we don't want to look at that because it's too simplistic for us.
Grandfather used to carry the Gita with him. And also, I believe, see no evil, speak no evil, hear no
Mm.
evil. Can you share about that and the power of the Gita for today and this philosophy of the monkeys?
Well, I think the philosophy of the monkeys is self-explanatory. I mean, he said we should not uh, see evil and do nothing about it. We should not speak evil, and we should not hear evil. And so it was a reminder every day that these are the three aspects in human life that are corrupting, and that we need to be aware of it, and we need to do something about it. Uh, when he said see no evil, it doesn't mean that we just shut our eyes and don't see it and don't acknowledge it and and live in our own you know in our own selves. It means that we see the evil around us and we do something about it, and we get involved in setting that right. And that is the message of the Gita, about being active, about being the catalyst for change. And so, in his case, because he was a Hindu, he found a lot of power and goodness in the Gita, but the same applies in any other religion. And unfortunately, we have exploited religion also in our exploiting of society and exploiting material things. We have exploited religion, and we have not taken the essence of the religion into our lives. We pray, but we don't incorporate that prayer in our own lives. We go and go to the temple and the mosque and the church, and we go and do a ritualistic prayer, and we think that we have wiped out our sins and come back and sin again. And that's not what prayer is about. Prayer is about believing in something, believing maybe not in God, but in the power of something that creates and destroys and creates again. And whatever it is, that there is something beyond us, and we need to believe in that and live accordingly, live according to the scriptures.
Beautiful. We see on the internet now, everywhere, news, there's so much inflaming of division, this view, that view, hundreds of views, conspiracies, who's doing what to who. We've seen this happening in India years back with a great amount of clash between Hindu and Muslim divisions, and all of that was being on purpose flared up for whatever reasons. There's some of us who are beyond these. We're holding a center line, an inclusion energy where we're not seeing ourselves as left or right. How can we serve this, seeing all this clash of viewpoints? What can we do to become sane right now? Right now.
I think we have to be active. And I am remembering a very powerful quotation from Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I don't remember the exact words, but I paraphrase it. And he said, the greatest threat to humanity today is not the evil that a few commit, but the silence of the majority. And that explains, we take the Hindu-Muslim situation in India. We may, there's a few people who are doing all the evil there and exploiting and causing violence. But we sit back and say, well, I'm not a communalist. I don't believe in this. But then I don't do anything to save it either. So we remain silent and remain on the sidelines while the few people continue to do their evil. So to put out that evil, we have to get active and embrace the people and bring them together and build that unity and harmony in the people.
Beautiful. Mama, this has been so rich and full. Your shares are timeless and so needed and valuable. Have they always been, and even more now, I feel. For us in our completion now, what else is in your heart to share with us? What's truly in your heart to share for all my friends listening?
Well, I just hope and pray that we can all be the change that we wish to see in the world, and that we will make that change in our lives and allow the compassion and love and respect and these good attributes that exist within us to come back to the surface and dominate our thinking and our attitudes, instead of all this negative crap that dominates our lives today. So if we can do that, this world will be a better place for future generations.
Well, my friends, we've heard it. I'm sure this is resonating some deep well, some deep stir, some deep capacity for us to act on these timeless principles that are already etched in our soul, to awaken our human collective oneness, our embrace of each other as family, our lifting up, supporting those in the worst conditions on this planet with our trusteeship, with our constructive action. Thank you. Mama, thank you so much for your time, your love, your endless work, your carrying on of unity for this planet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jai Shri
Thank you.
Krishna.
Namaste. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, friends.
Bye-bye.